Welcome back to Inmate Tea with A&P. I'm your host, April. Today we're catching up once again with our friend Jimmy, who you've heard on several past episodes. We've got the link below if you want to get caught up. This time we're talking about a topic that's as controversial as it is real: drugs in prison. With over 30 years of lived experience, Jimmy has seen it all, and he's here to spill the tea on how drugs make their way behind prison walls, what impact they have on incarcerated individuals, and what can actually be done to address this issue. Let's dive into it. Welcome, Jimmy.
Hey, hey y'all. Okay. Hey y'all. Well, I don't know how to go at this except to just come straight at you guys and tell you, we're dealing with a huge epidemic in prison. It's all about the money. And it's not like it's something new, because when I came to prison, I had 155 years, didn't think I was ever getting out. And I started dealing drugs in 91 at Central Prison. An officer named Miss Lambert was bringing me and other inmates drugs, and she ended up getting arrested because she brought a .38 caliber handgun to an inmate, and he got caught with it and told. Yeah, you can Google this in the Raleigh News and Observer. His name was, I'm gonna call his name, that way y'all can know, but his name was Gerald Piscata, and she brought him he butted in on my business and got her to bring a .38 caliber Derringer, and then he ratted on her after he got caught with it, and in the prison. So you see how dangerous all that is. And then I went to Salisbury in 91, 95, and Officer Von Rooten and Officer Miss Brown was my mules, and they brought me drugs for almost 5 years there, and that's when we had cash. And then at Brown Creek, 99 to 2001, I had a officer, Mr. Johnson, and a Mrs. Herring bringing me drugs. And
how would they get it in, Jimmy? Because do they have to, when they come in, don't they go through like the metal detectors and have to go through a search too just to come into their shift?
Well, that's usually the norm, and that's usually the SOP for the prison system. But let's just say that you work up at the gatehouse, and I'm bringing in drugs, and I tell you, and I'm making, let's just say I'm making $10,000 a month, and I tell you, hey, look, let me get through here without any drama, and I'll give you $1,000 a month. That's how that works. Yeah. And then in 2010, I was at Lanesboro, which was the most violent prison in the state of North Carolina. People was dying and getting killed and getting stabbed up. There was unit managers, Mr. Walls, who was trying to run the gangs, MS-13, Crip, Blood, Folk, all that, and a SRG officer, Mr. Decker, and they was trying to run the prison like it belonged to them, and they was getting people hurt. And so I ended up contacting Captain Edwards, who's retired from in Department of Corrections now, 30-some-year retiree, and he called a SBI agent named Miss Bridges and Mr. Monroe from the Charlotte SBI office, and also a Mr. Tice and a Mr. Watkins from the Anson County Sheriff's Department. And I met with them by phone and in person, and we proceeded to knock off about 50 drug dealers in the prison, their outside contacts, about 20 officers that was actually bringing in the drugs. And then in 2014, I was sent to Central Prison for assignment, and the SBI contacted me again, Miss Ryan, and the sheriff of Wake County at that time, Mr. Harris. They knew there was a large drug ring going on in Central Prison, and they asked me if I could basically infiltrate that situation. So I proceeded to, and I did, and on October 31st, 2015, United States Marshal Service came in and arrested several officers, but also got the leader of he was a leader of the Bloods, which was a inmate named, they call his nickname's Omega Red. Everybody knows that name, trust me. They're the ones that kidnapped Colleen Jansen, the district attorney for Wake County's daddy, back in 2014 and took him to Georgia and was threatening to kill him. You know, you can Google all that, I'm sure.
Let me ask you a question. You know, we in prison, we have a stigma that, you know, the inmate is the sole access and the sole provider of the drugs that comes into the prison.
That's a lie.
Are subjected to degrading searches. We are subjected to unreasonable hardships. Our families are subjected to unreasonable hardships at visitation.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Let's just be real with that question, because in the last 5 years, they basically phased out, in these institutions, maximum security, close custody, they basically phased out all visitations and made them on tablets, to where you see your family on tablets, and they phased out all physical mail to where they scan it and send it to you. Now, they used to blame the inmates' families and the mail and say, oh, they're getting drugs in like that. But now they don't. They're going to a visit on a video, and the mail's getting scanned and coming on your tablet. So that just leaves the police going in and out of the prison. But yet we have 20 ambulances pull up out front of the prison. If we could find out what the number was of the EMS that came out to these institutions, close custody institutions, in the last year, the public would be appalled at how many times ambulances has come here for drug overdoses.
Yeah, and you know, I remember, Jimmy, in 2003, there was a young man that actually passed away while I was at Cable City Correction. He overdosed on fentanyl, and there was no contact visits being made. And there was no mail coming into the facility. Nobody was leaving outside of the facility. That just, with what you're saying, that the restrictions that's being placed upon the inmate and the restrictions that we're facing with our visits, our mail, and the contact we're being denied with our family has no bearing on the drugs that's coming into the prison and guys that's overdosing and females that's overdosing on these drugs.
Well, if the listeners want to really do a little research that's really easy to look at, they can go and look at the Charlotte News and Observer 2016-17 at investigative reporters James Alexander and Mr. Gavin Off. They've done a 10-part series on drugs in prison, which I was the one that provided them with the majority of the information, because what prompted that is my friend David Merle Wise from Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, 58 years old, had 4 months left to get out, slept right beside me, and the police brought him some drugs and he died. And it freaked me out, and then that's when I contacted Mr. Eames Alexander and Mr. Gavin Off at the Charlotte News and Observer. They're investigative reporters, and I told them what was going on, and then we did phone interviews just like this, and they came to the prison and seen me, and, you know, the prison didn't want to let them in because they knew what was going on. But they told them, they said, look, y'all can be the next, you people denying us entrance, y'all can be the next story. And then they went ahead and let them in. Well, we did the 10-part series, and it's all about drugs in prison, how they get in here, what's going on, who brings them. And it's clear that this problem's been going on. I mean, look, man, I was a drug dealer, man, from 91 to 2010 in here, man. It's not like I'm sitting here telling you something that I'm just assuming. And some of the facts of the matter is, check this out. South Carolina, Broad River Correctional, Captain Livingston, February 2025, got convicted for smuggling drugs and taking $279,000 from inmates in bribes. South Carolina SCI Williamsburg, Guard Crossland got busted and arrested and convicted in March 25, taking in drugs and taking $56,791 from inmates in bribes. North Carolina, February 25, Wake County, John H. Baker Public Safety Detention. Guard Williams got arrested for smuggling in opium and heroin for thousands of dollars. And I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, you know, you got Wyoming, Brooklyn, New York, Alabama, Louisiana, New Jersey. And interestingly enough, in New Jersey, the DOC got sued twice, North State Prison and East Jersey State Prison, for turning a blind eye to pervasive drug smuggling by guards that resulted in multiple deaths of inmates. I mean, and the list just goes on and on, man. I mean, you know, how can't the public see? They hide this from the public because they don't want the public to know this. And you know, you was talking about Tabor City here. Well, how about in 2021-22, right up here on Green Unit, Sergeant James Hisley, I'm gonna say his name, I don't care, got arrested and convicted for bringing in a lethal dose of K2 that had fatal results to inmates, and him and his whole staff on that unit.
Jimmy, I remember that one in 2022. It was all over the news. You know, I remember seeing a bunch of them, but a bunch of incidences where officers in North Carolina were found smuggling drugs into correctional facilities, and you still hear about it today.
Right.
But I mean, I remember specifically that one in 2022. There was a significant seizure of many different kinds of drugs. I think it was like 100 firearms that they retrieved from this guy's home.
Yep.
And he also had the legal stamp, which, if anybody that watches our show knows, that one way that drugs are brought in is through legal mail. So he was able to stamp mail coming in to make it appear to be legal mail, so that the drugs that were sprayed on the papers contained in these envelopes could make it through into the facility.
Right, but who was getting blamed for that? Inmates and their families.
Yep.
You know, that's so wrong, you know. That's so wrong. The sad part about it is, you know, Pig, you know this, in prison, you know, you get a write-up, they take your canteen from you. Well, that just created a monopoly because now little Johnny that got a write-up, they took his canteen privileges. Well, he has to go to his homeboy and say, okay, well, let me send you a cash app to get canteen. But usually little Johnny's getting a cash app to send to the police to get some dough. You know? And you know, these guys are coming to prison addicted to drugs, and they're wondering, well, why is these guys coming back 6, 7, 8 times? They do a year or two. But it's because when they come to prison, the police are feeding their drug addiction, and they're not getting any help that they need to stay out and get their minds and lives together. And you know, me personally, I call it shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
You know, that's basically what it is.
From the guests that have come on our show and talked about drugs before, that's been the reoccurring thing that they have said, is that it's easier to get drugs in prison than it is out on the street.
Listen, if I had, you know, I ain't got it, Robert, but if I had it to where I could call and say, hey, look, I need a cash app to do this or do that. Right now, this prison, right now, where I'm sitting, I could call somebody over to my door. My row's on lockdown, and there's another row out. But I could call them over to my door and say, hey, man, let me get some meth, let me get some Suboxone, let me get some K2. They'd say, well, and let me get your cash app number. And they give me the cash app. I get on the phone, cash app somebody. They'd send the money. Well, in 10 minutes later, the dude would come to my door and slide the stuff under my door, man. That's how easy it is.
Yeah, but you know, Jimmy, you made a big point. You made a big point just a few minutes ago. You know, the drugs are not coming in by the inmates. The drugs are being brought in by the officers. And then the fact is, there's so many guys that's coming to prison that's already addicted to either marijuana or meth or some other kind of drug, and they're coming in here and they're experimenting with other drugs that's in prison, and they're leaving in a worse shape than they were before they come, because they're getting addicted to a different drug, and they're addicted to the drugs and alcohol that they were addicted to before they come to prison. You're not.
That's right.
They're not. Drugs is a sickness. Drugs is a disease. And yeah, when you have a sickness or a disease, and all you're doing is taking something that's exacerbating the situation and you're not taking preventative measures. I mean, if prison is designed to correct your actions, why are they not taking the time to put these guys in programs, put them through the proper programs? Because, like you said earlier, there's no money in that. There's no money in putting these guys through programs and getting them off the drugs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money.
Well, a lot of money.
Well, talking about money, how much money did you make when you were selling drugs in prison?
Well, to avoid any tax issues, let's just say this. I helped somebody start a business, and I paid for their building, a turnkey job. They came out and set the building up, and it cost $88,000.
And you were able to pay for
that? And
that?
I gave them that. I gave it all to them at one time. I had it.
Wow.
And so, and then you have to think, I was involved in gang activity, and I had 8 soldiers. And, if their mama couldn't pay the phone bill, or their mama couldn't pay or the girlfriend couldn't pay their car payment, or they didn't have money to come visit their loved one, or they couldn't pay the house payment or rent or whatever, well, I paid it.
Yeah.
And that was 8 people that I took care of.
What happened in your life, Jimmy, that made you give that up and say, I don't want to sell drugs anymore?
Well, I seen my friends start dying and getting murdered because of drugs at Lanesboro. And I backed up from the gang activity. I said, boys, I'm through. I said, I'm through with this drug thing. I'm through with this gang stuff. Y'all can have it. Y'all want to kill me for backing up, laying my flag down, whatever you want to say. If you want to kill me for it, just be aware that I'm going to be fighting just as hard to do something to you as I would to our supposed enemies. I said, so y'all know me. You know what time it is. Let's keep it real. I said, I'm not going to continue to pump this poison out here and kill, and I'm seeing my friends die from it. I said, it's not right, man. I said, I sat and watched a man's mama and daughter bawl because there's 2 brothers at the prison, and one of them died. Well, when I go out to visit, there's the other brother and his mama and his sister and them sitting there, and they're bawling. There's his mama and his sister and them bawling because their loved ones died in here from doing drugs, man. That's what really made me stop.
Yeah.
That's really what made me stop.
Well, I'm glad you did. I'm glad that you had that kind of awakening and that, realization. I hate that you lost somebody over it, but there's so many people that die because of drugs and because of that disease of addiction to drugs.
But see, here's the thing is y'all have to remember this. These people are, the Department of Correction are going to continue to blame the inmate when it's clearly the officers that are doing it. Especially these close custody prisons, because there's none of us go outside these prisons. That's just like, remember the little incident that happened to me back in February, and Officer Miss Ellison wrote me up on a fictitious write-up because I seen her passing drugs to somebody, and she said some old slick stuff to me, and I said something back to her and said, look, I don't see nothing. You need to watch your mouth. Don't talk to me like that. And 30 minutes later, she came in there, and I'm in the cell. There's no cameras in the cells. The camera can't see in the cell. So she made an allegation against me that got me locked up. That got me essentially out of her face off that unit. And that's the tactics they use. First, she thought she was going to have the gang members run up on me. And when she seen that wasn't going to work, then she came with the fictitious write-up stuff. And to show you that it was a fictitious write-up, she wrote me up on February 28th, and I didn't get convicted till like April. And usually that's a 72 to a week process to write you up, convict you, and you do whatever. But it took months to do it to me. And, it's just not right. I mean, everybody that comes to prison, there are guys sitting in here right now that are on 90-day CRVs. There are guys that's got 2 or 3 years that are minimum custody, and they're sitting stuck right here in close custody, and they're getting doped up on this dope here, and they're getting ready to get out next year or next month or whatever, but they got them in close custody. Why do they got them here? Because they don't have any room in the medium and minimum custody units to ship these guys to let them get the help that they need for these drug problems, because the prison system is so full. Across the state of North Carolina, all the jails are full, 70,000 people.
Yeah.
and most of them's waiting to come to prison. And, you know, there's just steadily arresting people. You know, like in my situation, hey, somebody said I've done something. Hell, they just locked me up. There it is. You know,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and here I am sitting looking crazy. Thank God I don't have a drug problem.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because if I hadn't have dealt with that, you know, and they did this to me, I would have self-medicated, you know, to try to alleviate the pain that I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank God
And really, that's all
you got that demon off of you.
Yeah, right. And really, that's what's going on here is they're using the trauma that these men have experienced in their lives, and the police are using that as a guise to bring these drugs in. You know, like I said, they kept saying it was us and our families and this, that, and the whole time it's been the police. Because, you know, listen, let's just keep it real, y'all. You can't go to visitation and stick enough stuff up your backside to make any money. You feel me? You can't put enough up in there, not unless you're abnormal, and that's your fault. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But these, you know, the drugs have to be consistently brought in. And like you said, with the one here in 2022, when these police got caught here, he's got a legal stamp at home that he's putting the lawyer's name on the envelope, and he's doctoring it up, and bam, he's sending it right into him.
Yep.
Come on, man. Let's get real.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we spoke about this today because, you know, with the current events happening in the world right now, well, especially here in North Carolina, you know, a lot of people are left saying, how's that guy out here doing this stuff after he's already been in prison, and how's he out doing this and doing that? Well, I mean, this kind of explains a little bit of it.
Well, you know, sadly, it's North Carolina. North Carolina is happening, and it's an epidemic here, but it's a national epidemic. If you go and look at all the other prisons in all these other states, it's a national epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're talking about 2.5 million inmates incarcerated in prison.
Yep. Well, we are number one in the world for incarcerated citizens per capita. So that's what we're number one in the world for. This country.
That's what.
And you got 10
demographics. If you look at the demographics of the people that's incarcerated and what happens while they're incarcerated and the lack of treatment, whether it's mental health treatment, whether it's drug treatment, whether it's the ability, father accountability classes, whether it's, you know, just plain education. It lacks substance. So you want to look at this man in Charlotte and say, well, why did he commit the crime that he committed? First, you got to say is, hey, this man was locked up 14 times, and he come out and he done this again. Why is there not an institution for mental health for people that need mental health treatment? Why is there not an institution designed for people that need drug treatment? Why is these places, you got 62 prisons in North Carolina. You don't have one facility designated for these things. Why?
And that man that killed that woman in Charlotte, what he done, that was psychosis due to K2 addiction, paranoia, schizophrenic stuff. You know what I'm saying? That's exactly what that was. I see him do it in here.
Well, Jimmy, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. As always, we enjoyed it, and we appreciate the information that you bring. You're always ready to spill the tea.
Well, I pray this was informative for the listeners and for the people in North Carolina, because they're the taxpayers and they're footing the bill for this prison system, which eats us about a third or more of the state's $25 million budget every year. And this is not the answer to the problem that's going on in society, because you know, you just can't keep putting a Band-Aid on a bleeding artery. These men need help. And the people that's supposed to be the authority over them are the ones that are causing real problems.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you. Thank you, Jimmy. That wraps up another powerful conversation with Jimmy here on Inmate Tea with AMP. Drugs in prison are a reality that too often gets ignored or oversimplified. Jimmy's insight from 30 plus years on the inside reminds us just how complex the issue is and how much reform is still needed to make prisons safer and more focused on rehabilitation. Until next time, I'm April, and this is Inmate Tea with AMP, where the truth always gets poured.